And as it relates specifically to the sports relationships that you have in that market, where did the idea come from to start attaching yourself to those professional brands that are in market? We are all familiar with them. I'm in Metro Detroit, and obviously I've seen a ton of Seahawks and Mariners games. But talk a little bit about where the idea came from, and then perhaps any roadblocks or barriers to entry you may have encountered once the idea took shape.
Yeah, so I think if the whole idea of really connecting these things intentionally was really birthed in a member of our team in a previous health system that actually now has spun off into create a company called Playbook for Health that we continue to work with. But they were in-house at the time, working with us in a big health system and in around building brand and about looking at our relationships with sports in particular. And I think what we really did is instead of taking, we wanted to use that premise that, at its core, sports are emotional, right? Because if they weren't, its logic would tell you that there wouldn't be such a high density of fans that happen to live by the team that where they're fans of, right? Because as we know, if it was purely performance, there would be a great deal of diversity of fans in any given market and not the high concentration. So there's an emotional connection at the local level that says, I feel part of something. I'm part of this community, and this is a representation of my community. And that we started to call the transfer of trust. And the reason part of that is most of us at some level, we're a big corporation in our community, right? And by virtue of looking at trust surveys of consumers, basically the larger, more distant a company seems to be, the less trust seems to be ascribed to that, right? Our doctors, our nurses have a high degree of trust, but us as a health system is not a high degree of trust. Insurance companies is even worse. But when it comes to sports teams, data shows us that over 80% of fans trust the sponsorships more than they trust other advertising. And so the day and age, the way that the media markets have changed, the day and age of us going out there and saying, we're great, come to us because we said so, are kind of over, right? That way of getting customers to actually change their patterns is kind of gone by the wayside. And so we're really into that, what we've called that transfer of trust that says, using that trust in the sports teams and getting the sports teams to understand how we add value and then use that in their words to communicate to their fan base that they trust us. If you build it right, it doesn't look like a partnership at all. It comes off to the fan as the team selected us because these teams have millions and millions of resources and they can pick anybody they want because they're these great teams. So therefore, if they pick so and so, then they really must be the best. And that's the end point you want to get to in the mind of the consumer, is to that point where there is no doubt because the team has said you're great that you are. And that actually yields, and we'll talk a little bit more later about kind of where the ROI starts to come in, but that's where you actually start to build some traction with converting people to your brand or solidifying them with your brand.